All right, good afternoon from a sunny, windy, cold, whatever it is day here in Peru. Apparently winter is really going to stick around with us. So a couple of things I just want to put on video, make sure everybody kind of is in the same grain, and I just kind of like these to kind of touch in. So last week you did have your part one of your semester project due. I have started to wander through them. What I think I will probably do is either try to see if we can find some times via Zoom, or I'll probably do like a video to send out to each one of them because we can actually do that now, which is kind of a neat way to do some feedback. So in week 2 is part 1. I know that's kind of a strange thing, but when I go through there, I'll probably try to give you some ideas, some thoughts, how to go through there, what we can do, and how can we get better utility with what you're going through in the future. In our discussion boards, so we've talked about, is an effective IT manager, or is a manager more effective if they have some IT skills? And I think you really have to have, as a manager now, so my own viewpoints, obviously, you have to have some overview. You have to understand what's going on, even from that idea of like the budgeting. What percentage of budget do we allocate to IT in different areas? A lot of companies are finding they're spending 2 to 3% of their complete budget on IT, or in some cases more, depending on what the business is. So making sure that that it's seen in the correct light. Yes, it is a cost center, but there's also some benefits, and making sure proactively budgeting for those things. So that's where I think that person who's had some IT experience or some general knowledge is probably got an advantage. So, and then we talked about our mission statements on a company, and we talked a little bit about Peru and its mission statement, and we regularly go through those. And in fact, we're getting accredited by HLC again, or they're coming for a visit in about a month and a half. And one of the things that they do is look at your vision and your mission statements, and do those really align with what we're trying to do, and hopefully we do there. And you're going to find a lot of companies that don't, that their mission statements or their value statements have kind of been abandoned because they've changed models. And probably it's one of those things that you need to look at to try to make sure that you're in the same area. So this week's discussion board, I want to find some information about you. So at this point, I believe everybody in the class has taken project management. So we hit a lot of these little topics in here. So we talk about project management briefly. We talk about databases and all these things. So this is kind of a wrap-up of all those individual courses. So one of the things that we have in here is where skills from project management or tools that you have in project management might be applicable. So I'm going to share one with you. So Project Libre. I like Microsoft Project. I can't afford it, but even for some of my own things when I talk to people, this is really a great way to use something very similar. So it'll do a lot of the same things, the Gantt analysis or Gantt charts, and you can do scheduling. So this is kind of a great tool to put in your arsenal. And I recommend it to a lot of people who aren't in the IT community. They just are put in that role of, I need to manage these projects. How can look, I can put this data in and at least try to start managing my end goals and my portions. So that's just my little piece in here. But what I want is 3 personal experiences where project management skills would have helped you avoid a problem or take advantage of an opportunity. So I do ask that you respond to 2 classmates. And typically, if you can post your original post by Friday, that makes life easier for everybody. I know that schedules are a little crazy this semester for everybody, so please try to be aware of what's going on there with everybody. So let me look at our assignments real quick. So I have not pulled material in from the second textbook yet, so I'm reading through it because everybody likes to read a textbook for fun, but it's not horrible. It'll put you to sleep at 9 o'clock at night. I'm just kidding. But it's got some information that's kind of interesting. and some nuances that the other book hasn't got in it. So every book has a plus and a minus. I just didn't intend to have to throw content from the second one. So hopefully Cengage won't break us this week. So at the end of chapter 3, there's a case study that we're going to do about the State Patrol and some ticketing issues that they have. So as we look through some of this content, think about how you can apply it to that individual case. So let me go back and I will see if Cengage will let me load today. Yay. All right. So if I look at chapter 3, somewhere in here, so I can find the end of this chapter, and we can look at some concepts that are in there. So there is a case about our friends, the State Patrol. I'm sure everybody likes to get a ticket from the State Patrol. What's interesting is I actually got involved with from a technical side a little bit of working with some police agencies and some sheriff's departments implementing electronic tickets over the last year and a half. So the state had mandated that no longer are handwritten paper tickets enough. It's an interesting model that these agencies are told they have to write these tickets in a particular fashion. You have to have an electronic system that updates them into the state. But when you actually look at the revenue from a ticket, it doesn't go where you might think it goes. So it doesn't go back in most cases to the county at all. So it's kind of like being forced to, hey, we have to spend all this money to do things that we don't get much benefit from. Now, one of the benefits, at least to the state, is then all those tickets are in there very quickly. So if you get pulled over in 2 different counties, it'll show up pretty quickly. Personally, I think we ought to have, at the beginning of the year, you ought to be able to pay, $500 or $1,000, and when you get a ticket, it just comes out of that bulk amount and doesn't count against your driving record. But I try to get more tickets, apparently, than most people. All right, so there's a couple of videos in here from the author, and this is a sample down here from a couple of years ago of a part 2. So we'll talk a little bit briefly, but it's there for your use. This one, I've redacted some information and some names, but this is actually from a federal credit union, and kind of shows one model of what you can do for part 2. So let's go look at PowerPoints for this week and talk about a few things. There's some videos in there, like I said, that are really good. The book has a lot of interesting information. And if I can make that work on the right screen, yay. So one of the things we're doing in here is we're creating what are called use cases, and we're looking at goals, and we're looking at how do we break things apart. So you're going to see this is a really great chapter that blends in with your assignment. In other words, you're looking at identifying pieces of this company, and we show some techniques and tools that you're going to do. So user stories are one way to do it. So user stories, as a sales clerk at McDonald's, I want to enter orders quickly so that the orders are gotten in quick. So it's a story. So here's a sample that the book provides. So as a shipping clerk, I want to ship an order as accurately as possible as soon as it's received. Okay. So to get there, to get to this goal, then these are the things that we need to do. So available order details must pop up on the screen when available. Display and scan from a portable device would cut time from having to write down inventory on paper and then transfer it in. This system should indicate numbers of items in stock. Recommend a shipper. So if we're shipping things out, then we have an automated algorithm or a technique to figure out, based on the size and the type of the item, which particular shipping outfit happens to be better, and then it should automatically print those labels out. So we're getting as many of these things automated so you don't have to make that manual decision. We already have those details programmed in, and it would automatically say, all right, this item has to ship FedEx, this ships UPS Ground, this one we can ship United States Parcel, whatever those tools are that are available. So these use cases is something that, and when I say system, I'm really, think about it as the business. What the business does, whether it's manual, whether it's electronic, so it performs something in response to an activity. So it may be a customer walking in, it may be a manager requesting a report. It could be a user trying to find an item. So there's several different ways that you can start breaking down your company. So you're looking at sometimes this idea of a noun verb. And so if we say there's a noun and there's a verb, then that way we can do that. So one of the examples, and they use this in the case RMO through there, which if you haven't read through all the RMO stuff, I think it's kind of interesting because it very much looks like a real company that's selling sporting good products. And we know over the last couple of years that market has shifted a lot. So I think it's kind of interesting. So when we look at this, we have to find who are the users. So in this case, we have a customer or a potential customer, a marketing manager, and shipping personnel. So the customer, online, they're going to search for an item. They fill their shopping cart. One of the things they may do then is look at things like, they may look very much at, what do people look at in those ratings? And I'm going to guess that about 99% of people, what they're going to do is they actually look at those ratings. And in fact, I would say that before we put it in the cart, most of us look at those ratings. Now, we know there's always this issue of paid ratings and fake ratings. And, sometimes you have to read them and, you have some dissatisfied customers because they didn't understand what the product was. But, so, for example, if we're going to go find somewhere and stay in a hotel, yes, we have some hotels that we normally stay at, but we also will, or some chains or some companies, but we'll also do reviews to make sure that those are actually a decent hotel. Typically, Hilton hotels are pretty decent, but we've ran into several, when you actually read the reviews, that were not the cleanest, that were not well kept. And so we look at those products. So now we've got our product in our shopping cart, and now we have to convert that into a sale. And so you've probably had some marketing classes about how that conversion process works or what we can do. And we've got more and more automated tools. So now if you leave something in your cart and you walk away from a website, Amazon or something else, you'll probably get an email or something else giving you some details saying, hey, come back and get this. So these are those end goals. So they want to buy items. The marketing manager, they need to update information, promotions, sales histories. Maybe we haven't sold any of these widgets for a long time, and we need to decide, hey, we're not going to sell this product anymore. And then the shipping personnel, once the customer has pushed through and created that order, then they're going to ship the items, track that shipment, and in some cases, and more increasingly important, is that ability to return an item. So in our COVID world, oftentimes we can't go see a product, and we actually will use that knowledge that we can return things. So for example, with Amazon Prime, because we're more willing to order something unknown, or something like clothing that the sizes are a little bit wonky on. So I've discovered as my daughters are growing up that women's clothing sizes are a complete mess. Whoever has created any of these systems, I'd like to take them somewhere and beat them because I can't tell what I'm ordering for my children at this point. So one of the things we do then is we identify all those potential users. Now, when we go through this step, can we miss them? Yeah, we can miss people that are involved in our product. But again, when we look at our company, for the project going on, and you want to look at who are my potential users. So where are they functional? So are they an end user? Are they a clerk? Are they a salesperson? What are they doing? And then we may end up looking at them by organizational layer depending on the size of the company. So typically when we go in there, we would try to do some personal one-on-one interviews. So what are their goals? What are their tasks? What are they doing? Here's where it gets kind of interesting, especially with some of your projects. When you go talk to the users of a system or a company, what they say may very well be a lot different than what the owner has talked to you and said he thinks is going on. My guess is 99% of the time in almost all organizations, you're going to find that there's a disparity between what's actually going on and what management thinks is going on. Because the users have evolved and tried to figure out ways to create solutions, and the managers aren't really always necessarily aware of how those processes are working. So we create our list of use cases, and we look where things can be duplicated or there's an inconsistency. So maybe we have two people and they're doing something similar, but they're doing it in different ways. So that's always an interesting piece when you do that, is we can come up and we can figure out that, these two users, Mark and Mary, are doing things differently, and why? Why are they doing that? And then we're going to go through and come back to your manager that you're working with. Typically, you're kind of in a evolving state. So you go back and you pick some more information out. So we also have to look at what are these ideas? What are events? So events are things that are going to cause an action. So we've already talked about users. They click and they buy something, or they pay a bill, or they whatever it is a user does. But there's other events. So in this case, this diagram kind of makes it interesting because it shows what's external. So these are external to our company. While I wish I could control customers directly and always make them pay their bill, we know that's not true. So anything out here is that external. So customer changes his address, pays a bill, makes a charge, whatever it is, those are all external. Internal, we have things that happen because of those external events, but we also have some things that happen inside our system. And so one of them we call as a temporal events. So things like bill payments. So time to send out monthly statements or late notices or summary reports or other things that we're going to do. So think about like your water company. Every month your water company reads your water meter and they send you a bill. So in there's some temporal events that occur. They have to figure out how to read the meters. So when that's becoming increasingly an electronic process, they calculate the bills, and then at a certain time of the month they send out a bill. At a later date, so another 15, 20 days, they send out a late notice and say, all right, now you're behind on your water bill, and then in another time period in the future, if you haven't paid that, then you even get the dreaded, hey, I'm going to cut it off your water service, and then they'll eventually send somebody out there. So we have external, so usually that's some kind of a person interacting with us. A temporal event, time-based, or a state event. So a reorder point in inventory. Those kinds of things are not necessarily based on a temporal event, but something that's happening. So a customer comes in and says, hey, my water meter doesn't seem to be reading, and that triggers a repair order. Those kinds of things. Inventory. So external events, again, we've talked a little bit about those. Internal, so typically a lot of those are time-based. So what I'd like to do, so this kind of tells me a lot of things that can happen. But what actually affects our business is really, it doesn't affect anything internally until we actually buy that shirt. Now, what I love here is we're talking about Sears, and if you can find a Sears store anymore, good luck to you. I think there's probably 7 in the United States left, and those are probably going to be closing at any time. And certainly, COVID, I live not too far from the mall in Lincoln, and I have no interest in going into the COVID fest that is the mall. I also really don't want to go to Walmart, so I'm going to probably mail order, try it on, and then send it back. But here we're trying on shirts at Sears and at Walmart, but the only thing that truly affects us is when it's entered into the system. So here's a series of events. So some of these are a little antiquated. How many times have you asked for a paper catalog? Now, I will say I kind of like thumbing through some of them that randomly show up. And I look at them and go, oh, I need to buy all these things. But most companies don't any longer request, have a catalog they'll even send you. So these are just some of the steps that could happen. So customer wants to see if it's available. You place an order. And again, most of this is now online. So this has changed in a lot of cases. But many of us have had a change of heart. We go, oh, I didn't really need to buy the $1,500 video card because my wife's going to find out. So I'm going to call them and say, oh, is it in the, can we cancel that? And we're going to then update it, or if it gets to me, I have to return it in some fashion. So the other thing when we're constructing these use cases and events is we want to worry not about the system. So I want you to take whatever paper-based, electronic-based, whatever system out of your consideration at this stage. So what I want you to do is think that everything is possible and doable, and you don't have to worry about that until this point. So you don't have to worry about passwords and logins and if the database can handle it or if we can do a certain operation. What I want us to think about is we call it a perfect system or a perfect technology, and that everything is possible, so we use that as one way to do that. So I'm going to skip the event decomposition. So I want to look a little more at these case descriptions. So here we have this idea of these use cases. So now we have search for an item. Well, we know who can do that. That may be a customer service rep, a store rep, a manager, all different kinds of people. But a lot of these items are only available to customers. So fill a shopping cart, convert a cart that's in a reserve, create a phone sale. Well, that might be the customer service representative. If they're doing it in store, that might be a service sale. So what we're looking at is these different items. So here we have, back on the order fulfillment system, the same type of idea. Ship, create a back order if we can't get it, which if you've ordered anything recently, that's probably a giant category at this point. The returns, look up order statuses. So typically customers want to know where their order is. So they want to know about shipping. So shipping can do it. Customer management can all look at that. Tracking the shipment the same way. But we don't want So we don't want our internal people, though, being able to create comments. We want them to be able to see those comments and hopefully respond to it in some cases, but hopefully we're not creating fake reviews. And then here's our customer account subsystem. So updating accounts, sends messages, requests friend link up, so they're using something like LinkedIn or something else in this case, or in this case they have something called Mountain Box, one of these product loyalty things. So a lot of companies use those to get that loyalty. And then again, we now have other cases here where product information, maybe we're having some kind of a sale, maybe we want to add an accessory package or something, or we have other business partners we need to deal with. So, and then these reporting pieces. So customers don't get to see that report, although, here's what I will say, in most systems, so for example, if I go into Amazon, I can very quickly see everything I've bought at Amazon over the last year or 2 years or 3 years. So some of the reporting is actually interesting. We just hope my wife doesn't see what I'm purchasing at Amazon in any case. So we need to come up then, in a lot of cases, with a visual model of how some of these work. And this is a little simplified, so I know it looks a little silly. However, I will say that I can at least draw the stick figures in here. So an actor, so the shipping clerk, ships an item. But in this case, we know we have some items that are automated. And so we can actually visually depict where these things become automated, where they are human interactions. And so if we look at each subsystem, so here's our customer account. So here's our customer over here, but we can also see how they interact, and other entities, so sales representatives, management, can all join in and process some of these things. So, and then the book shows these for all of them. So here's our sales for the customer searching for an item, empty carts, all those kinds of things. Internally, so here we have our customer service rep and a store sales rep, which they're probably interchangeable at this point in a lot of systems and a lot of companies. And then we have this relationship. Oh. So not only do we have the idea that a customer can fill a shopping cart, but probably they had to search for that item. So it includes that. And the shopping cart includes that we're viewing content. And we view accessory combinations. So again, I like to pick on Amazon because they're really good about showing, hey, you've got this item in your cart. Do you need some warranty with that? Or do you need some other item? So really, this week is about creating those use cases and starting to identify who our actors, who our elements are, and different people in there. So, use case steps. This is a pretty good slide that talks about the different pieces. So, stakeholders, who's involved, what communication needs. And again, my guess is when you go through there, because you're probably working with a manager to start with, if you can interview people doing this same thing, you're going to find that it's a little different, that the motives and some of the ways they do things are different than what management thinks, almost universally. So it becomes one of our first issues where those soft skills, that how do I politely tell the owner of this company, it doesn't really work the way he thinks it does. So you may find that and run into those particular issues. All right, so in this week, come back. So week 3, you do have a quiz. I've got a couple of example videos in here also. And again, this might be the biggest piece, is that sample project for you to look at. So trying to get you to look ahead a little bit, and I will start sending out some kind of content, or a reflection upon what you've done already. So if I look ahead at week 4, you can actually see what that next step in our project is going to be. So you might look ahead and take a look a little bit here about what it is. So I would encourage you to wait until you get feedback before you jump too far into this, in case I make you do a 180 or something weird. I typically don't, and especially if you've asked me already about it, it's probably not an issue, but every once in a while I get somebody who will decide that they're going to, I need to take on the entire company of Walmart and try to provide, like, whoa, let's break this down. So before you get there. So this is really the technology list, information systems list. So what are they doing? How are they doing it? So our first step is we identify the business. What's the business? How does it interact with people? Who are its competitors? Those kinds of details. And now we're going to take a look at the business in detail. So I will say now, and I'll say it again and again and again, this is where details become truly important. So one of the things you might find when you walk in there and you say, vital to this business is a printer. And if you just say they have a printer, that doesn't give us any information. So is it a LaserJet printer? Is it an old dot matrix printer that sounds like Canon going off for some reason? Is it a laser printer? How old is it? What kind, those kinds of details. So that later on, as we get further in here, you can make appropriate recommendations. So if you walk in and you see that they're using an inkjet printer and they're printing shipping labels with it, and during the day, as part of your information, you found out that they do 700 labels a day, and they're literally changing out ink cartridges every day, that might be something that you could address later on and say, hey, what if you did this and you used for example, a black and white laser printer that has much lower cost per page, because that's all the information you need. So on the other hand, it may be perfectly fine. So if we don't have those details, it becomes really hard. So you'll hear me yell about that all through the semester, is details, details, details. All right. So recap really quickly. Make sure you've posted on the discussion board. make sure that you looked at this case at the end of the book about our state patrol. So there is a case study. It's kind of interesting to see how that works, so please make sure you post on that, and then we'll talk about that one next week also. So a couple videos, sample, and I will be working to try to create feedback for you in some way. So you'll start to see some emails come out. I've looked at some scheduling tools, trying to get them to interact with our Microsoft software that we're using now so I can put my calendars all on one thing. I will say, because my wife and everybody uses Google Calendars and my stuff lives there, and then I've got an Outlook calendar on our Exchange server, sometimes my life gets a little complicated trying to figure out where everybody is. And to make it even better, my ex-wife, so I know where the children are when I have them most of the time and when not, and all these things, also uses a shared calendar with me. So I will try to find a solution so that I can find some open times. And I would like to set up Zoom sessions with everybody that's online and just kind of sit down and talk about your project with you and offer some insight if I can, or in some cases just kind of figure out a little more about the project. So you'll see we'll do those several times, and in fact the final at the end of the class is then a interview / conversation about your project at the end. So don't panic, but at some point you'll see those coming up. All right, I'm going to walk away from this for a second and let you guys, if you have any questions, always feel free to email me. I may respond with a Zoom link depending on the time of the day. I keep some kind of weird hours, so if you see an email coming back out at 1 o'clock, don't be paranoid or scared about that. I just have odd hours. All right, any other things we need to talk about? I think we've covered it all really quickly. As you'll see, we're going to do less content this way in the book, and we're going to do a lot more content on your project. So as this project ramps up, you're going to find yourself spending more and more time on it. All right, everybody have a great week. Try to stay warm if you're somewhere where it's cold. If you're in a warm climate and enjoying the beach and the sun, I'm jealous. All right, thank you very much.